In many ways, 2020 has been a surreal year. Some call it the longest year in existence. For others, months flew by like minutes. As the pandemic engulfed all corners of the globe, we were brought together in a sudden strangeness. From social distancing to new normal, we gained a new vocabulary overnight, tried new tricks to keep busy as we locked in under lockdowns. But as we struggled and still struggle to make sense of what all this year was, there's little doubt about one thing. 2020 was undeniably the year of loss. A loss of time, of opportunities, plans, possibilities, but above all, of lives. Since the identification of the first COVID-19 case in Kerala in January, about 1.5 lakh have died due to the virus. This number tells us not just of lives lost to the disease, but also because of the inadequate care at overburdened and underfunded public hospitals. In response, Prime Minister Modi did little to revive the dwindling health sector, crumbling infrastructure, and ensure protective equipment for medical staff. Instead, he resorted to distraction.
ताली बजा करके, थाली बजा करके, घंटी बजा करके हम उनके प्रति अपनी कृतज्ञता व्यक्त करें, उनका हौसला बढ़ाएं, उनको सैल्यूट करें।
For days, Indians, under the Prime Minister's instructions, clapped, banged thalis and lit diyas in their balconies, while at the front line, doctors, nurses and healthcare workers, Prime Minister Modi's Corona warriors, lost their lives. Also lost amidst this distraction was a vast amount of public money, approximately 10,000 crore rupees, into the abyss of the newly created PM CARES Fund. Despite the existence of a more transparent Prime Minister's National Relief Fund for Emergencies and Disasters, the government urged donations to the largely opaque PM CARES. Many donations were not so voluntary, deducted as they were from citizens' paychecks. Big corporates, of course, donated voluntarily, losing no time to avail of the tax benefits the fund offered. While the government shielded itself from scrutiny by denying any information about the PM CARES Fund despite the numerous RTIs filed, it sought to put citizens under greater scrutiny. Under the newly pushed-through National Digital Health Mission, citizens' health records would be digitized in the coming future to be linked with Aadhaar, another step towards a future loss of individual privacy, through state surveillance. In March, the nationwide lockdown was imposed without any prior expert consultation. While the BJP leaders never lost an opportunity to call this decision bold and brave, the economy lost its drivers. Critical sectors lost profits. Scores of people lost their jobs. But nothing came close to what the migrant workers lost under the draconian lockdown. Lost in alien states, out of money, work, shelter and food, lakhs walked to the one thing that they had left: home. Barefoot, in makeshift carts, on borrowed bicycles, parents carried their young children and children their old parents, while the government and courts mutely watched the making of the largest mass exodus since the partition of 1947. Some migrants got lost in special trains. Many were lost to hunger, many more to exhaustion. And when the parliament asked how many lost their livelihoods, demanded financial compensation for those who died on their long journey, the government seemed to have lost all data. No data, no loss, hence no recompense, it said. This year, we also lost some remarkable individuals. Former President Pranab Mukherjee, Lok Janshakti Party's Ramvilas Paswan, Congress leader Ahmed Patel, writers and poets like Shamsur Rahman Farooqi, Rahat Indori, Mangesh Dabral, and artists like Soumitra Chatterjee and Irfan Khan, each of them survived by a brilliant, dazzling legacy of their own. But amidst the multiple demises, it took only one death, that of actor Sushant Singh Rajput, to show what the nation had really lost: a moral conscience. The country watched agape as TV news media subjected actor Rhea Chakrabarti to a misogynist, ruthlessly vile and false campaign, blaming her for all of Rajput's miseries and death. In the non-stop din of drugs, depravity and death, the country lost sight of more critical issues: devastating floods in Bihar, rising job losses, and the record fall of the GDP by 23.9% in the second quarter. All were questions left unasked by the mainstream media. Around the same time, at the Sino-Indian border, we first lost land in Ladakh and then men in trying to recover it. Cabinet ministers lost their ability to even take China's name while referring to the transgressions, let alone restoring any territorial integrity. Not lost were occasions to ban Chinese apps, the only retaliation the Indian government could manage. On August 5th, Prime Minister Modi conducted the Bhumi Pujan of the Ram Temple to be built at Ayodhya. By September, memories of numerous eyewitnesses who lived through the bloodshed and destruction of December 6, 1992 had completely lost their worth. Courts acquitted L.K. Advani, Murli Manohar Joshi, Uma Bharti, Vinay Katyar among the 32 accused of the demolition of the Babri Masjid on account of inconclusive evidence. The demolition was not pre-planned, the judgment said, ignoring the testimonies that proved otherwise. With each passing day, the Muslim minority lost their political stake in the country. Before being demonized in the name of UPSC Jihad by the likes of Sudarshan News' Suresh Chavanke, the community was blamed for spreading COVID-19 under Corona Jihad. With no evidence, members of the Tablighi Jamaat and by extension all Muslims were subjected to hateful Islamophobic rhetoric and violent attacks across the country. The precedence for this violence, both verbal and physical, was set on early this year. In February, anti-Muslim riots were orchestrated in northeast Delhi as an aftermath of incendiary speeches by BJP's Kapil Mishra and Anurag Thakur. More than 50 people, mostly Muslims, lost their lives in the killings. Many more lost their homes in fleeing from the violence at Seelampur, Jafrabad and Maujpur. Some never returned. Shopkeepers lost their shops to looting, school children lost their classrooms to arson, the faithful lost their mosques to plunder. Delhi police, for its part, lost something too. It lost sight of the impartial, fair investigation it is mandated by law to conduct. Ignoring those who provoked the violence, it instead rounded up voices of dissent against the Modi government, using its favourite plaything, the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. Called seditious, anti-national and traitors, students and activists like Sharjeel Imam, Khalid Saifi, Ishar Jahan, Miran Haider, Tahir Hussain, Shifa Ur-Rahman, Gulfisha Fatima, Asif Iqbal Tanha, Natasha Narwal, Devangana Kalita and Umar Khalid lost their freedom for expressing dissent. In Maharashtra, Gautam Navlakha, Anand Tiltumbre, Hani Babu and Father Stan Swami too lost their freedom for their dissent. They joined Sudha Bhardwaj, Vernon Gonzalez and Arun Ferreira and Varavar Rao, all of whom were arrested using dubious evidence planted to implicate them in the 2018 violence at Bhima Koregaon. This year, the Supreme Court often lost its temper. At Prashant Bhushan's tweets, Kunal Kamra's satire and Rachita Taneja's cartoons, at citizens' right to protest and at any demands for physical hearings. One person, however, who did not lose favour with the court was Republic TV's Arnab Goswami. Convening on a holiday to release him on bail, the court emphasised its duty to protect individual liberty. For the Bhima Koregaon and the Delhi riots accused, the wait continues. With Goswami's prompt release, the government iterated its commitment to press freedom. But this commitment was perhaps lost by the time it could reach other journalists like Asif Sultan and Patricia Mukheen, especially in Uttar Pradesh, where all was lost by way of law and order. The UP police arrested Malayalam journalist Siddique Kappan under charges of sedition while he was on his way to Hathras to report on the horrific gang rape of a young Dalit girl by Thakur men. Her death was followed by a forced overnight cremation and subsequent intimidation of her family, all of which was an indication of what Dalits, especially Dalit women, have lost in Yogi Adityanath's Uttar Pradesh: their dignity and rights. Instead of targeting crimes against women, the Yogi Adityanath government targeted young men and women using the bogey of love jihad. As the state government promulgated the Uttar Pradesh Prohibition of Unlawful Conversion of Religion Ordinance with a view to stop forceful conversions, several other BJP-ruled states like Madhya Pradesh, Karnataka and Haryana followed suit. In 2020, young interfaith couples lost their freedom to love. But despite the doom and gloom of 2020, one thing surely has not been lost: the spirit of resistance. This year has been bookended by mass resistance. It started with one of the most vibrant protests seen in recent times. It is ending with protests that are even more dynamic. In the chill of January, elderly women of Shaheen Bagh sat under the open skies in protest against the Citizenship Amendment Act. Right now, at the end of December, farmers, young and old from several states, spent their nights at Delhi's borders to demand a repeal of the corporate-friendly farm laws. Both the struggle of January and of December are similar fights for survival, for rights, for equal space and equal stakes in Indian democracy, for justice, for freedom, and for a country that belongs more to its citizens and less to its rulers.